Very good evening to all. This is Mr. Srihari, Assistant Professor working in Mechanical Engineering Department, Guru Nanak Institute of Technology. Today, as a part of academics under IIC, we are organizing expert lectures on sets for third year, second year, fourth year. So today we have expert lecture on heat transfer subject by the eminent personality, Dr. Srinivas Sharma Garu from Matrus Engineering College, Nadargul campus. Sir, good evening, sir. I invite you for the take the session, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sri Garu. Respected head of the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Dr. B. Vijay Kumar, and always my associate friend, and something like a very good personality, who is also my neighbor, Professor Sri Hari Garu, and the management and principal of GNIT, and most enthusiastic students. I welcome you all to this session of heat transfer. If you observe the background of my presentation, it's all burning flames. You observe there's a lot of heat with some rocket nozzle and analysis pertaining to temperature profiles. This particular subject is slightly complex if you look in a perspective view. But if you look from analytical point, it is as simple as solving mathematical relations. So I'll start my session. Prior going into this particular session, yeah, I think there is. Yeah, I'll go to it. I had some objectives. At the end of this lecture, the students would be able to understand the areas of applications of heat transfer specific to conduction. Because I learned, like, you were already gone through this particular unit of conduction. So you would be understanding from a different perspective. All of us teach the same thing, but only thing is how you look at them. So you understand areas of applications of heat transfer specific to conduction, analyze boundary conditions and solve differential equations to obtain solutions of direct heat transfer problems, apply the concept of electrical analogy applicable to thermal systems, and develop solutions for temperature distributions. This is the basic objectives that every student end of my session should understand this. So if you look at contents, I have some contents. I will be discussing about transport phenomena, because prior, when you're going into heat transfer, you should know what this transport is. We call this as a wonderful subject in chemical engineering known as transport phenomena. You talk about diffusions and all. Then what are the governing heat conduction equations in different coordinate systems? Like, you have Cartesian coordinates, you have polar coordinates, and you have spherical coordinate systems, and how we are looking at it. Then what are these boundary value problems? We'll talk about thermal analogy, thermal resistance, critical radius of insulation, some situations of interest in solving direct heat transfer problems. And the last one is basically right now what people were doing it, inverse heat transfer problems. Whatever we are doing in academics, whatever we are doing at PG level, as well as at undergraduate levels, are all direct heat transfer problems. So I just want to tell something, delta X more than what it is there in our regular syllabus, and what actual industry is looking at it. So how you have a inverse heat transfer problems and all. So for this, we will go with transport phenomena. Now, if you look at transport phenomena, say, I'll say this is more like a classroom. So if you look at transport phenomena, you have these three physical quantities. One is mass, other one is momentum, and other one is energy. All these three physical, I'm sorry, it is the other way around. This is energy and this is momentum. All these three physical quantities are conserved. So we call them as conservation equations. Conservation equations. And these conservation equations, define the basic boundaries of physics of any problems that, involve in this world. And when you look at them, mass gets transported, momentum gets transported, energy gets transported. The transport phenomena talks about the transport of mass. Mass transport is called mass flow rate. Energy transport is known as energy flow rates. Momentum flow rate, m dot u. Now, whenever you are transporting it, the transport is in the absence of work. Work done is zero. Transport is in the absence of work. So when work done is zero, it is very, very clear that they move on their own. So how do they move on their own? Say suppose I will take a discussion board and discuss. Say I am taking a small discussion board here. We'll call this as a discussion board. Yeah. Discussion board. And we will try to discuss. There is a law known as Fick's law of diffusion. I'll come to that Fick's law. Then we have law that is governing momentum transport, specifically in viscous mediums, Newton's law of viscosities. Then you have your concept of conductive heat transfer by Fourier law. All these three phenomena discuss about diffusions. Diffusion is basically observed where the situations work done is zero and the physical quantity always move in the direction of decreasing physical gradients. So suppose if I am looking at mass transport, the rate of mass flux, this is mass flow rate per unit area. Rate of mass flux is directly proportional to concentration gradient, dou C by dou X minus. Now, one example which I want to give on this particular situation is, say there's a large chimney. There's a large chimney, which is giving out exhaust gases coming out from a power plant, say thermal power plants. And this particular effluents, we call them as effluents, contain soot. They have pollutants. And in and around this, you have atmosphere. You have atmosphere. And if you observe it, these particular effluents will diffuse on their own. You are not doing any amount of work. They diffuse on their own from the regions of higher concentration to regions of lower concentration by mass flow rate. Mass transport. Mass is transported on its own. Mass transport phenomena. Say, I have a situation where I have a high energy, situation. I have a high temperature body. This is high temperature body. And I have a low temperature body. And heat will flow from region of high temperature to low temperature on its own in the direction of decreasing temperature gradient. Say suppose I take a situation of current, electrical current. You should be knowing this. Electrical current. Say I am generating electricity at some thermal power plant. This is TPP, where generator gives me current at higher voltages, say 110 kVA. This is the voltage, or kilovolts, no amps, power, kilovolts. Now, when I am trying to take this particular current at my home, the voltage is 220 volts, Indian conditions, 220 to 230 volts. Now, how do I connect it? From here, it comes to some 72 kV. From here, it will come to 33 kV. From here, it will come to 11 kV. And from here, it will come to my home. In the process of current flowing from this thermal power plant, say which is at maybe 300 kilometers away from my home, if I look an average super thermal power plants like Ramagundam, I am observing that the work done for current to flow from this particular to this particular is zero. Work done is zero. It is always flowing in the direction of decreasing voltage gradients, dou V by dou X. Current always flows in the direction of decreasing voltage gradients. This is your Ohm's law. I is directly proportional to dou V by dou X. Ohm's law. So if you look at transport phenomena, all transport phenomena move in the direction of some gradient, some decreasing gradient, and let us see what is that gradient. If you are looking at mass, J is mass flux. That means mass flow rate per unit area. This is directly proportional to mass diffusivity, directly proportional to your concentration gradients, dou C by dou X. From higher concentration, it always moves towards lower concentration till it attains equilibriums. When you remove proportionality, you get a diffusion coefficient. This is mass diffusion coefficient. This is your Fick's law of diffusion. Fick's law of diffusion is very important when you deal with chemically reacting fluid flows, where there will be mass transfer as well as heat transfer. And if fluid is moving, momentum transfer. So all three phenomena, all mass, momentum, and energy boundary layers, what we call. So all three, diffusion phenomena occur. Now, if you are looking at momentum, say mass flow rate, momentum, m into u dot, rate of momentum is force per area is stress. And in fluids, you talk about shear stress. Wall shear stress is directly proportional to your, velocity gradient, dou V by dou X. And that particular relation, if you're writing it, oh, sorry. God, thank you. One of the wonderful invention of this computers is Control Z, or else all my work would have been gone. 1 minute. Yeah. Hey, wall shear stress is directly proportional to velocity gradient. And this wall shear stress, if you remove it, it is mu dou U by dou Y. This mu is a dynamic viscosity. And dynamic viscosity divided by density is kinematic viscosity, which is expressed in non-force terms, meters square per second, is index of momentum diffusion. Momentum diffusion. Molecular diffusion of momentum to molecular diffusion of heat is your Prandtl number. Again, when you go into convection and talk. And if you look at the next one, this is energy. We are very specific with this term, energy. We are very specific with this particular term, energy, wherein, oh God, this is playing with me. Good. This is energy, where we always look at low-grade energy. This low-grade energy is heat. And what it says, heat flowing per unit time is rate of heat flow. Per unit area is heat flux. Is directly proportional to temperature gradient. And what is the nature of temperature gradient? Negative. What it says? It always flows in the direction of decreasing temperature. And in doing this, you are not doing any amount of work. So all these three transport phenomena are discussed here. This is Fick's law. It states that rate of mass flux is directly proportional to concentration gradients. Then you have Newton's law of viscosity. Newton's law of viscosity very clearly it indicates your fluid flows. It indicates the situation wherein, if you're talking about viscous fluid flows within boundary layers, whenever fluid is flowing, fluid always flows in the direction of attaining momentum balances. Hence, momentum is not, rate of change of momentum is force. As long as force is balanced, fluid is static. If forces are unbalanced, fluid always flows in the direction of unbalanced force till it attains that equilibrium. So this wall shear stress, this is given by your Newton's law of viscosity, where kinematic viscosity, nu, which is mu by rho, mu by rho is index of your momentum transport. Never treat this particular situations are independent. They're all dependents. Then, if you are looking at Fourier law of heat conduction, fantastic law. This particular law, if you observe it very carefully, any heat transfer teacher, my teacher's teacher, and my students and my students' whom so teach this particular law, they start with the particular definition and say that Q dot by A is directly proportional to minus dou T by dou X. Very clear. There is no proof for this. It is experimentally observed. So this is clearly an empirical law. This is empirical law. This is not your, any mathematical proof to this particular thing. Basically, this was observed by a set of metallurgists in Japan. There's a wonderful book on heat transfer by name Nakati Ozesik. In Ozesik, he gives how you have come out with this particular Fourier law. Fourier law is basically a empirical law. It does not have a proof, but experimentally, when you measure it, it happens. So what it says is rate of heat flux. Flux means per unit area. Heat is Q. Rating means Q dot. So dQ by d tau. Rating function of heat with respect to time is heat transfer. And this rate of heat transfer divided by area is Q dot small. What it says, rate of heat flux is directly proportional to temperature gradient. Temperature gradient means if this particular surface temperature, if this surface temperature is T2, this particular surface temperature is T1. If T2 is less than T1, so heat will move from left to right. This is what it says, because this is your space variable. And heat always flows in the direction of decreasing temperature gradient. Say by any chance, if T1 is less than T2, then if T1 is less than T2, then heat will be reversed. It will move from right to left. So Q dot is reversed. So the direction of heat flow is dependent basically on your temperature gradient. So suppose I start with some, I'll go with a small board here. Say I have a situation wherein there's a slab, and this particular slab, all sides I have, this is T1, this is T2, this is T3, this is T4, this surface is T5, this surface is T6. I'll say T1, T3, T5 are at, say, suppose 100 degrees centigrade. T2, T4, T6 are at 20 degrees centigrade. In which direction does heat flow? If somebody asks this particular question, this is the most difficult question I have ever come across. I'm telling you again. Because we have to be very careful with the assumptions of this particular law. This is three-dimensional heat conduction problem. If you are looking at it, this is three-dimensional heat conduction. And you cannot say that along from, as this is 100, this is 100, and this surface is 100. So heat will go like this, and go like this. No, that is not the situation. That situation will work out only when this particular situation is applicable for one dimension. So when you write your Fourier law, the first assumption is it is applicable for one-dimensional heat transfer. Very clear. One-dimensional heat transfer problems. Second, it is empirical. It is empirical law. Third, applicable between applicable between any two isothermal surfaces. This is the best thing what I have loved. Whenever I read this definition again and again, I write the assumptions again and again. This is the best thing, best part of this. I always look at it because, where should I get a cube? Okay. Somewhere here, this is cylinder. Now, okay, I'll just draw it. I will draw one more. Okay, leave it. Say, if these two surfaces, whenever I am saying surface, this particular surface is isothermal, T1. This particular surface, T2, is isothermal. What do you understand? Temperature at any point on this should be constant. Even same is the case here. Temperature on this particular surface is constant. So if I try to join a slab, and observe it, this particular direction, I'll call it as Y. This particular direction, I'll call it as Z. Or this direction, I'll call it as Z. This direction is X. I am observing neither in Z direction nor in Y direction, temperature varies. Temperature remains constant. That means dou T by dou Y is 0. Dou T by dou Z is also 0. So in which direction temperature is varying? It is varying only along X direction. And how is that variation? It is negative. That means head slope. Then in such situation, heat always flows from this particular surface, Q dot, comes out. Whether this value is same or different, that depends upon your steadiness and unsteadiness. So this is what your Fourier law of heat conduction explains. Then if you look at the Fourier law of heat conduction, is applicable both in solids, liquids, as well as gases. Please be careful. It is not just, it is applicable only for solids. Because when you come and look at the different modes of heat transfer, what are the different modes of heat transfer that we have? We have conduction, we have convection, we have radiation. My teacher, who was earlier, professor at JNT Anandpur long back, I'm talking about 30 years or 35 years back story. My professor at JNT Anandpur, while he was taking the class on heat transfer, has given me an excellent example, very excellent example, and which I will never stop to tell even to my students, because I could understand very clearly what it is. So suppose there's a teacher and there's a students sitting in a class of heat transfer. And teacher want to lend a book or want to give a book to a student who is sitting here or here. So what he will do, he will give the book to the student here. The student, there's a constraint. The constraint is the student, nobody should move away from their place. And this particular student takes the book, gives it to him. Then he will give it to him. And finally it is there. This is your conduction mode of heat transfer, if you observe it. See, this is a very layman's way of explanation if you look at the transport of a book from one particular person to the other, but it actually happens if you look at microscopic thermodynamics. Microscopic thermodynamics. The conduction of heat is because of intermolecular interactions. Intermolecular interaction. And if you observe the one which is given beside here, one which is given here, now this is indicating more amount of energy transfer here because the molecules are more ordered. There are more ordered. Whereas here you observe a lot of randomness. They are disordered. And you please don't conclude it saying that is this entropy. No, I can't, because disorder can never be discussed on any board saying like wherever there is randomness it is disorder. It may not be. Order can be disorder and disorder can be ordered depending upon thermal actuations. So you observe clearly that because of disorder, the transport phenomena is very, very less. So whenever you look at conduction, you have these particular free electrons. The carriers are free electrons mostly, or you have lattice crystal vibrations. There are various theories which talk about why it happens at micron levels. Now this particular electron is excited. Excited means you give energy to this. Now they are initially at their mean position. Gibbs free energy function is governing it, and when this electron is excited, what it does, it will know nothing in this universe except universe can be at a higher energy level, because entropy always increases for the universe. So, universe here talks about system as well as surroundings. So what the system do is it will give this energy to surrounding, comes back. Now, this particular electron is excited. This electron, what it will do is, it will look into its neighborhood. It will see whether to give energy here or here. It will not give energy back because, entropy always increases. So the process is irreversible. Hence, what it will do is, it will try to give back this particular energy to the next electron. This electron is excited, gives this, comes back. So finally, the energy transport occurs. This is conduction. So whenever you talk about conduction, you say intermolecular interactions. So conduction is basically observed in all three states of matter. This is the biggest misnomer. Everybody, says, they say that conduction occurs only in solids. Wrong. Conduction always occurs in that particular state of matter where you observe, molecules. So molecules, matter is consisting of molecules. So you have solids, conduction, you have liquids, and you have gases. In all three, you observe conduction, but it is more dominant in solids, less in liquids, least in gases. But you observe that the ability of this particular material to transfer the energy from one molecule to the other molecule, or from one electron, free electron, to the other free electron, is that its property, which we call it as thermophysical property, indicated by thermal conductivity. Thermal conductivity is ability of the material to conduct heat through it. Some materials conduct fast, some materials conduct slow. Now, why? This is the reason. This should be the reason for it. So thermal conductivity, if you're looking at it, thermal conductivity of gases is least than thermal conductivity of liquids, than thermal conductivity of solids. Again, in solids, you have, non-metallic crystal structures. Non-metallic crystal structures, diamond has the highest thermal conductivity, 2300 watt per meter Kelvin. Some of the literature say that copper crystals, alpha copper crystals, have a thermal conductivity of around 8000, watt per meter Kelvin, but it is highly unstable. So we don't take things corresponding to unstable materials. So as far as my understanding goes, diamond has the highest value of thermal conductivity. Then comes, pure metals. In pure metals, your highest thermal conductivity is observed in copper, 430 watt per meter Kelvin. Then comes gold. Then, your highest is in silver, 432 watt per meter Kelvin. Then comes copper, around 400 watt per meter Kelvin. Then comes gold. Then comes, aluminum at around 200 watt per meter Kelvin. Then you have alloys. Alloys are basically, you dope the pure metals. Thereby thermal conductivity, whenever you're doping it, is less. So you observe clearly that these particular properties vary. Then you have convection. Convection, go to the same class. My teacher is, so concerned. He want to come down and give the book only to me, to Sharma. I love my teacher. He always used to do that. So his name is, he's no more, but his name is Dr. Balram Reddy, excellent teacher from JNTU Anantapur. So suppose this, my teacher want to give me a book to me. He will come and give me the book, or he will call me and ask me to take the book. I think the second one is wise. If he is coming and giving the book, it is natural conviction. And if he's asking me to come down and take the book, that means the cold fluid is pumped over the hot fluid to remove the heat. It's your forced convection. It's the forced convection. So suppose this is what you're observing it when you're looking at, convection phenomena. Convection is basically observed only in fluids. Fluids means liquids and gases. Compressibility varies. It demarcates your liquids as well as gases. Incompressible are liquids, compressible are your gases. So when you look at it, you observe convection both in liquids as well as gases. Then boiling condensations are also observed in your convection. Then comes radiation. If you look at radiation, radiation does not require medium. There's no medium required. This is again a very specific and fantastic topic. Some other time, whenever I feel like, I want to address you back, I can talk only on radiation, because total radiation is different. I come back to the class and see, suppose if I would have got really bad marks in heat transfer, I used to in my initial classes. My teacher, if is not happy with me, or you want only specific, like the book should reach and nobody should move from their place, and no other participating agents has to be made, he'll throw the book to me. Throw. This is radiation. Earlier we had mediums. We had the medium. Now radiation does not have any mediums. So when you look at these three, what are those three? One is conduction. I don't know where I'm writing it. Yeah. One is conduction. Next is convection. Third one is radiation. These are three modes of heat transfer. If you look at it, conduction, convection requires medium, whereas radiation does not require medium. Does not require medium. Now, please tell me, my dear students, if you feel like, out of these three, which is most complicated mode of heat transfer? Which is most complicated mode of heat transfer? Yes, anybody can give me answer?
Radiation.
Radiation, sir.
Radiation. Okay. Nothing wrong in giving this answer. Yes. Any other answer? Now, as far as my understanding goes, yeah, radiation is definitely tough, but as far as my understanding goes, the most toughest, mode of heat transport is convection, because it is talking about momentum diffusion as well as energy diffusions. Suppose if this is chemically reacting fluid, something like I use a propellant in a rocket, to run this space vehicle into atmosphere, out of the atmosphere into some deep Earth orbits, like geosynchronous Earth orbits, around 25,000 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. There I'll go for chemically reacting fluids. I have mass diffusions, all three. Here I should understand fluid flow behavior, momentum transports, mass transport, as well as energy transport. So double diffusion effects are observed whenever you look at convection. If any of you were really interested to do some research on in the area of heat transfer, best area to pick is always convection, because many of the solutions are unsolved till now. And if you observe, pure conduction can never occur because we are all living in a ocean of air. If you observe it, we are all submerged bodies in ocean of air. And any heat transfer that occurs, it can never be pure conduction. It is conductive convective phenomena. Now, because you start talking on this, it takes years together. If you look at it, three-dimensional heat conduction equation, it all started with Fourier law. Then again, you may ask, how can you apply Fourier law for three-dimensional heat transfer when your assumption is only for one dimension? What we do, we take that only in x direction, again only in y direction, again only in z direction, add them, because we have superposition principle. Mathematics has helped us out. So in x direction, in y direction, in z direction, then you have internal heat generation term. Internal heat generations are basically observed either you're discussing from standpoint of chemical reactive substances, because any chemical reaction, if you're taking A plus B gives rises to C, plus say suppose enormous amount of heat is released, exothermic reaction. And if you are modeling any chemical reactor, then that particular reactor is assumed to be generating heat, internal heat generation per unit volumes. Or it can be a nuclear reactor. Nuclear reactor, you may be knowing it, whenever there is mass defect is converted into energy. So delta E is equal to, or E is equal to delta mc square. Because of mass defect, all that mass is converted into energy, and it is in the form of heat. That is what your fission reaction gives. 92U238, when you try to bombard with one neutron, it breaks into 56 krypton and 36 barium. 36 krypton and 56 barium plus 200 million electron volts of 200 million electron volts of MeV. On an average, heat has been released per fission reaction. Likewise, millions of this particular reactions will give an enormous amount of heat. That's internal heat generation. Or any electrical element, current wire that is kept in any solid or a conductor, and whenever you are passing current, I square R loss. This is the amount of heat that is being generated. So you are taking Laplace del square of T plus Q dot by K is equal to 1 by alpha dou T by dou tau. This is wonderful parameter that we define, thermal diffusivity. Thermal diffusivity is, where is the cursor? Yeah, this is the thermal diffusivity, alpha. And this thermal diffusivity specifically talks about thermal K by rho into Cp. What it says is thermal conductivity to thermal storage per unit volumes. And if you're writing this in your cylindrical coordinates, this is your cylindrical coordinates, and in cylindrical coordinates, radial direction, your this is axial direction Z, this is angular, this is again internal heat generation. So you can transform this particular relation to this by keeping the terms x is equal to r cos theta, y is equal to r sin theta, z equal to z. Go for explicit differentiation, dou square t by dou x square, represent it in terms of radial terms. Your axial as well as angular and axial terms, you'll be getting this. This is in spherical coordinates, because geometries can never be pertaining only to your Cartesian coordinates. So you can also write it in terms of your what do you say, your spherical coordinates, where r cos theta sin phi, y is equal to r cos theta cos phi, z is equal to r sin theta, and you can transform it into spherical coordinates. So whenever you are trying to write it, it is very difficult for us to solve three-dimensional heat conduction problems. Please be careful. So we will reduce this all to one dimensions, because one dimension heat conduction equations can be easily solvable by hand. So how? I will take one particular example. I'll start writing it. Dou square t by dou x square plus dou square t by dou y square plus dou square t by dou z square plus q dot g by k is equal to 1 by alpha dou t by dou tau. This is my relation. So suppose I keep boundary conditions. First, I will say steady. Whenever I am saying it as steady, there is no accumulation. Whenever there is no accumulation, right-hand term is nothing but a rate of rise in internal energy. So I don't have this steady. There is no variation of temperature with respect to time. At all times, temperature remains constant at a given location. First is steady. Second, I'll go to one dimension. Whenever I say one dimension, other two dimensions become zero. The third is I say no heat generation. It is not generating heat. It's only a via media. In such situation, this reduces to zero. I am left out with only this differential equation, dou square t by dou x square equal to 0, can be written in terms of total derivative d square t by, d square t by dx square equal to 0. If I integrate it twice, I'll be getting t is equal to C1x plus C2. Linear profiles. This is what I'm trying to show here. This d square t by dx square, plane wall, heat conduction, one dimension, no heat generation. This is specific for steady, no internal heat generations. In such situations, this is d square t by dx square equal to 0. And if I am trying to solve the temperature distribution, this is t minus T1 divided by T2 minus T1 is equal to x by L. Heat flux is Fourier law if I am